Breaking the gray.
The Rebel Sciences Podcast. On today's episode, Sarah is going to talk about the brain, heart, and gut connection. Here we go. All right, Sarah, welcome. We are back. Wow. I was just reflecting on our light enjoyment that we went through and kind of our last discussions around light and recognizing that today we probably should move down the body a bit. We've been up in the brain, and now today let's go down to the gut. Give me a quick intro. How does the gut connect to the brain?
Hey Russ, yeah. Let's talk about the gut-brain connection, because the gut also has almost like a little brain itself. So it's called the enteric brain. It has a lot of nerve fibers. It actually has a lot of neurons. And you might be surprised to hear like serotonin, which is one of the major neurotransmitters, is made in the gut. And the gut actually has about 90% of serotonin or something like that, something ridiculously high. So the gut and the brain is directly connected via the vagus nerve, but also via the blood supply. There's a very direct connection, and it's something that in science is becoming more and more researched as we start to understand a bit more about the importance of this connection on all kinds of illnesses, both gut illnesses and brain illnesses, and really on how the body works as a whole system.
Yeah, let's go to it's the vagus nerve, correct? Not the vagus nerve. Not the Las Vegas or the vagus nerve.
It's Vegas. It's Vegas.
It is Vegas.
I think Vegas is Latin for wandering. Vegas,
which makes sense for Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well, I think Las Vegas is something else. That means plains or prairies or something. But Vegas wandering, because the vagus nerve in your body wanders all over the place. Like it's actually a bundle. It's a collection of nerve fibers that go actually from your brain right the way down and around your gut, but all places in between as well. It actually comes up past your heart. There's a big flow of information via the vagus nerve that goes from your gut to your brain and vice versa. Although the information going to your gut to your brain is there's more information going up than down, if you know what I mean. So it's a very interesting connection.
Is it I imagine things like letting your brain know that you're full and that you don't need any more food, or letting your brain know that you're hungry. But are there other things beyond kind of those basic kind of Maslow lower level things of food, shelter, water that the vagus nerve is actually communicating?
Yeah, I mean, yes, obviously things like eating and feelings of feeling like you've eaten enough, or feeling like, you've eaten something dodgy, that they are obviously signals that are going up to your brain. But as well as that, there are other signals, for example, from bacteria that are communicating constantly with the vagus nerve. I mean, one of the very interesting things, I'm kind of going off a bit on here, is I listened to something by Jack Kruse, which is Dr. Jack Kruse, somebody who writes extensively on things like the gut-brain axis. And he said something very interesting in one of his talks the other day, that actually the vagus nerve is where the gut senses the photonic energy or the light energy from food. And it actually provides information about where the food has come from, what latitude and what time of year. And that gives your brain information about your environment, which is one of the reasons why he's a big advocate of eating locally and eating according to season, which is something that I've taken up, which is a very interesting form of information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I just, one side note, watched a documentary on sommeliers and how sommeliers can actually, without a label on the wine, can drink wine and be able to tell you exactly what region it came from, where did it, the exact grape. They must have incredible vagus nerves.
Yeah, and maybe that's the information they're getting, because just think, the grapes have, they've grown on different sides of the hill with different sun exposure or different latitudes. Maybe that's actually some of the information they're able to pick up.
Yeah, we'll have to do a vagus nerve measurement on sommeliers. But I love this idea around the environment and the light energy of food. That's pretty incredible findings.
It is. I mean, I don't know how much research there is on it, actually, because it's something that is more theoretical, but it makes a lot of sense. And also that this light information is probably picked up by bacteria as well as by nerve cells in our body, because actually in our gut there's way more bacterial cells than there are human cells. And the bacteria actually do play a huge part in not only digestion, but also making hormones and also signaling. So there probably is this very complicated dynamic of, the information from the environment, how that gets to your gut, the interplay between our systems, the different fungi and bacteria and stuff that we have living in our gut.
And Sarah, the understanding of that really exposes why it's so important for organic foods and why it's so important probably for you to eat things that are natural. I go back to the first time we spoke, and when we discussed the foraging part, right? And it really brings to light how important that is, because those chemicals can really screw things up in your gut, I bet.
Yeah, of course. Yes. And if you're talking about light, like the light information that you're getting is biophotonic emissions. That means just light from biology. And if you look, there are certain kinds of techniques you can employ to look at light emissions from food. And it's vastly different depending on how you've processed the food. Like you say, wild food has a hugely different biophotonic emission than some processed food. And then how you treat that further, like microwave food has shown to have a far less biophotonic emission. So yeah, you're right. All of that information is information that we're totally unaware of from a kind of a cognitive point of view, but our bodies are very aware of. And this is the information that we're giving ourselves each day with every bite that we eat or air that we breathe. We're giving ourselves information about the environment.
Yeah, I remember reading back when I've tried every diet to lose weight, and the intermittent fasting and the more balanced diets around your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your others, whatever the 30-30-40 plans, things like that. But with things like bacteria and things that really can throw your stomach off balance. Should we talk about a little bit about the imbalances of your gut?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dysbiosis, which basically means gut imbalance, is something that is becoming an ever-increasing problem. And I think that's a combination of people eating out-of-season food, processed food, maybe food that's got high detrimental bacteria content, but then also this gut-brain connection, because if you are stressed, that has a direct input on your gut because of this gut-brain connection. We all know what it's like if you're nervous to give a presentation or something, you can feel your guts churn, It's totally unrelated to digestion or what you're eating. It's because your brain is getting the signal, okay, there's a stressful situation here, we need to stop digesting. You might have to run or fight, whatever this situation is. And of course, we're faced with so many stressful situations now, and it's not like we are actually going to fight or flight. We normally have to deal with it in another way. So there's all kinds of reasons why, yes, then that leads to damage of the gut, damage of the bacteria, and then you have this situation where the gut is usually the first line of defense, and it's usually the first place where people have problems.
Yeah. So it's both the outside world, the impact it has on your emotions, and then what's actually happening within your stomach, and that all that creates an imbalance. Another aside, can you reset the balance in your gut?
Yes. Yeah. I think there are a lot of things you can do from both points because, your gut is causing you to have mental imbalances, and then sometimes the mental imbalances cause you to have gut problems. So you can address it from both angles. You can be aware of what you're putting in your body, and, very, very simple thing is to cut out sugar and processed foods and to start to eat more locally. I mean, that's an obvious, very simple thing, but also to pay attention to what's going on in your mind and your thought processes, because stress has a very real detrimental effect on the gut. So, you may think that it's okay to be rushing all the time, or, that you can deal with it later, but actually the damage can be done to your gut that you then, takes a long time to sort out. So you can change it. It's actually changing your gut flora composition, I don't think it's an easy thing to do. It's something that you need to work on, and it's something that you might need to kind of have specialist help with. And in the biohacking world, you can do things like you can assess your microbiome. You can take samples from almost every orifice you like, and then you can send that sample away, and then they will give you a breakdown of all the different bacteria you have. Then you can implement something to try and skew that. And there are some extreme things, things like fecal transplants, there are some very extreme ways you might be able to influence your gut biome. But I think it's one of those things that it's not as simple as just taking a probiotic.
Yeah. Have you had gut problems, and have you applied your biohacking here?
Yes. Yeah. I was talking about this actually before we came on. I have suffered from something called IBS in the past, which is irritable bowel syndrome, which is something that I think it's very widely diagnosed nowadays. A lot of people have things like IBS, and there's also something else called leaky gut, which is a little bit controversial. Some doctors say that there isn't such a thing as leaky gut, and some do, which is where you have like the membranes in the gut, the junctions aren't fused properly, so you get remnants of food and bacteria leaking out into your bloodstream, which can initiate some immune response. But I've definitely had IBS in the past from being in fairly stressful situations. And I think since then, I'm always on a battle to kind of stabilize my gut. One of the things that I've just done, actually, I was just up in Hertfordshire where they have a local butcher which has an organic, his source is organic grass-fed meat. So I bought a load of bones and made myself a bone broth. And I do take different kinds of probiotics. I tend to mix them up. I am doing like a recovery and rest program, and sleep, of course, because this is where you repair everything in your body. So I'm currently kind of on my own little gut healing program, which I do regularly, to try and keep on it, because I don't want to get IBS again, because it's awful to have all that bloating. But I mean, I haven't had it for a long time, but it's definitely one of my weak links.
Yeah, it's and IBS, somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% of the global population has IBS. And I think something like almost 30 to 40 million Americans have it. Right. And it more so in females. And it's something that, if you can avoid it, right, it's all about diet, but this feels like something that you can apply to your day-to-day life and really, avoid those terrible IBS symptoms and reactions.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that once you kind of notice that's a weakness for you, that you can start to take remedial action fairly quickly. But again, like I say, I think once you've gone down a route, there are a lot of causes why people get it in the first place. The way that you're set up in the beginning of your life, something very fundamental, like whether you're a Cesarean birth or whether you're a vaginal birth, all of these things set up your bacteria at the start. So, you have to deal with the cards you've been dealt. And then from there, if you have that information, you can start to do things to give yourself the best chance of having the best bacteria and avoiding those symptoms. But once they come along, there are ways to address it. And because we're talking about gut-brain connection, a lot of the symptoms of IBS you can address by addressing what's going on in your brain, meditation techniques and things like that, because it is triggered by stress.
It's interesting. And we can go back to, past episodes, and, it feels to me one of the core theories of biohacking is understanding who you are and the specific makeup of yourself to allow you to then put a plan in place. And it's specifically here, and I think this is a really good chance for us to go into, something that people really don't think about, and maybe people don't even know how were they birthed, right? And imagine us over 40-year-olds, and I will put myself there. Sarah, you're younger than me. We'll never share our ages, but I imagine that like it's happening more often now, right? So cesarean sections are happening more often. Do we know those numbers? But what is the impact of that? Like, what's the impact of being cesarean birth versus being, birthed, vaginally?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worrying because in some circles it's elective. People are electing to have cesarean sections. And my sister is a health visitor, and she calls it too posh to push. Some people are deciding against having a natural birth because it's painful and it's difficult, and there are other options. However, it's always going back to nature, isn't it? And going back to what the body is meant to do. And the delivery, when you have the natural delivery, you are exposed to a lot of microbes and things on your way out that you're not exposed to with a cesarean birth. And to the point where now people are saying that you can maybe do some kind of bacterial transplant for the baby if you've had to have a cesarean section for some medical reason that might give the baby a chance of having their gut be populated with the bacteria that they need. It's so crucial for your future health to kind of have this exposure to the bacteria that you need early on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm imagining that there are things popping up in parts of the world where you can do that. This isn't like a kombucha thing, right? Like this, you can't drink kombucha and replace that, right? This is something a little bit more extreme than that.
Yeah. Well, yes. No. I mean, there are things to do. If you find out very late on in life that you had a cesarean, but I mean, you can't go back and undo anything, and you can certainly, like you say, kombucha, you can drink fermented drinks, you can have fermented foods, you can eat a lot of yogurt. But I think really, no, there are certain things where this is what you need to set yourself up in life to have the bacteria that you need to go through that environment. I mean, like you say, with biohacking, it is about getting back to that kind of nature's wisdom of how things really are meant to be from an evolutionary point of view.
Yeah,
but, I mean, there are always hacks. There are always
I imagine there's probably a good set of supplements, and we can talk about that. But you talk about the going back to nature. I imagine our topic today around the brain and the gut and what we put into our bodies is probably the thing that's changed the most for human beings on this planet is what we put into our gut, I imagine.
Yes, I think it's probably for sure. The food that we eat is very different to what our ancestors would have eaten for a very long period of time. We have food that's flown all around the world, that's easily available. We also have very highly processed food. We also have a very sterile environment compared to the environment that our ancestors would have lived in. So from a bacterial point of view, we probably have a hugely decreased diversity of bacteria. I mean, humans, we lived on the ground, actually on the dirt. You were actually in contact with the dirt, with animals, with a lot of people together. Washing was, very different than it is now. And certainly now we're in this time of COVID where we're told, we have to cover ourselves in antibacterial glue. Right. On a daily basis, we're drastically decreasing the diversity of the bacteria we're exposed to. And I think, that's something that, of course, that's going to have a huge effect on our biology.
Yeah, we aren't going to have those. Our immune systems are for another topic, but it's all connected.
Yes.
I'd like to ask though, are there supplements here that we can recommend that people can kind of apply today to kind of, get their gut right, or reset their gut or get their gut back to a place where they're feeling better about it?
Yeah, there are all kinds of supplements, of course, but I think if we talk about something that maybe is more available. Things, simple food, whole foods that you can eat. You've already talked about kombucha. There's different ways of fermenting foods where, of course, when you ferment foods, you're exposing the foods to a bacteria, and that bacteria grows on the food, the beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus that you'll find in yogurts and in kefirs. You know, different countries have different ways of doing it, different ways you can experiment with actually making your own fermented foods. Mm-hmm. The bone broth, I make my own bone broth, which is basically you get animal bones. You need to make sure you get them from organic grass-fed animals. You know, you need to make sure that you're not then stewing up the chemicals and things from industrialized farming. But if you can get hold of good bones and things like that, or like a good organic chicken, you can make a bone broth, which is hugely beneficial. You know, these are things that are not really expensive tablets that your body has to do something strange to process. This is readily available. When I was in Finland, I tried this fabulous product, which was some kind of soil drink. Like, these guys had made this, it was called the black stuff, and it was made out of the soil from the forest that they basically like put through some purification so it didn't have any nasties in it, but it was drinking dirt. And so I did do that. And, you know, it's when I was doing that, I was speaking to this Indian lady, and she said that they often do that in different Ayurvedic medicines. When you go to a new place, is just have a little teaspoon of the soil and drink it up, you know, so that your gut knows where it is and you're getting exposed to that. And a way to do that, maybe not quite going as far as drinking the soil, is just being out in the garden, doing gardening, or just getting your hands in the dirt so that, you know, you're getting it. Because your hands will sense that, you know, you have got sensors all over your body for bacteria. Yeah. So basically being in the dirt, you know, there are things you can do, you know, eating organic vegetables. So, you know, you're not getting sterilized vegetables. There's ways that you can change your diet without fancy, expensive supplements.
Yeah. I know that now people have been home more often with quarantines and lockdowns, growing their own herbs, creating their own gardens. Seems to be a good start for people.
It's a good start. And I've had people who I would never have thought it. I mean, I'm in a quantum biology group, and I've had them swapping recipes for sauerkraut, you know, because people are wanting something to do, and people are beginning to realize, okay, you know, this is an important thing, and it's something that, you know, you do just have to get your hands dirty and get in and start doing your own thing. Yeah.
You know, what might be helpful is what we can provide is maybe a link to a few cookbooks or something that you might recommend to kind of getting started here. You know, I would love to, you know, go through a couple things as we kind of wrap things up. You mentioned something earlier, and I want to it seems important because you mentioned it as attached to kind of resetting it, but what is gut flora? Can you just define that for us?
So gut flora is the organisms that live inside your gut. And actually we are so many more of these different species than there are human cells in the gut. And so it's bacteria, it's yeast, it's all the different species of these single-celled organisms that live within us that do different things. It's a symbiotic relationship, really, that we have. And I think we tend not to think of that. We tend to think of bacteria as something that's independent of us.
Yeah.
But actually we're not at all. We are, another word for it is holobiome. Our biology is made up of actually a lot of different species. We're not just humans. We are a kind of menagerie, if you like, of all different creatures. And so the flora is really like the different species of these bacteria that we have inside our gut. And there are so many different ones. And like I say, I think to have a variety is to be the most healthy, and to have those that are specific to your age, your gender, and your geographical region, because different bacteria grow on us at different times and in different places. So flora, I kind of see it like a garden, it's kind of gut flora, a kind of reminiscence of a garden, isn't it? It's like, having the right plants and flowers that you need in that garden in order to do the things your body needs to do. And it's some of it's fairly fundamental, like, for example, making vitamin K, that's made by bacteria in your gut. These are essential for life things that our gut flora are doing.
No, it's fascinating. I think that you've really helped lay out the ecosystem that lives, this ecosystem that lives within your gut. Yeah. So a few takeaways from today. Let me recap, because I'm very interested here. I have had lifelong stomach issues. I had my stomach radiated because I had cancer at a young age. It took me a very long time to get my stomach to reset, kind of get balanced back. Okay. So getting that gut flora right. And I think we talked about several things. One of them is drinking some dirt. I think that's actually, we want people to know that as a takeaway today. But it's getting the bacterias right in there and making sure that you are drinking the kombuchas, eating the whole foods, seasonal. What else? Getting the bacteria from yogurts. Any other tips that we can kind of let people leave with about getting the gut flora right? Yeah,
well, the gut flora will also respond to what is going on with you mentally. So I think the other takeaway is, you can't skip bits. You can't just go to the bits you like. I mean, you can't just eat yogurt because you like yogurts and think that the bacteria is going to be good. You have to do the whole thing. So you have to get your sleep right. You have to look after your mental health. You have to do the de-stressing, meditation, finding quiet time, because all of these things have a drastic effect on your gut flora.
That's right.
So I think understanding that it's a holistic approach is the approach. The only really approach that's going to work is a holistic one. It's one that's going to encompass mind and body and, take care of all these gut bacteria. So it needs to be a bit of a process. And it's something, like you say, with biohacking, it's all about measuring, find a way to measure it, whether you go to the extreme of having your gut flora, totally profiled, which is something I've done, which is very interesting, but not for everybody, but have some way of measuring it, even if it's just a diary. But yes, if you take a holistic approach where you deal with your mental state, you deal with your stress, you deal with what you put in your body, what's the water quality that you're drinking, all of these things need to come together. And then I think, people can heal from, all kinds of horrific gut conditions.
Yeah, I think you've really spelled out the importance of balance, of both getting the balance right in your stomach, getting the balance right outside of your stomach in your emotional state, getting the sleep. Those two things have to go hand in hand. You can be incredibly kind to your stomach, but incredibly awful to yourself by taking on stress, not sleeping. Those two go hand in hand. You brought up something that I think is a good tip for next week that we want to get people excited about, which is remote healing. You talked about healing. Can you give us some hints of what we can look forward to next week?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about remote healing next week because right now, again, we're in this lockdown, and we are now having to think of other ways, that we need to take on our own responsibility and address what's going on. Something that I've been looking at is remote healing, and I do some work with a guy who does some very interesting remote healing work. And what I mean by that is having somebody external to you working on you, but from a distant place.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So, someone who maybe is looking at a photo of you with the intention of healing you and having a positive effect on your health. How does that work, and how can you maybe integrate that, and what are the options for that? It's a very interesting topic.
That's fantastic. I look forward to it. Thank you again for sharing your world with us. Your world is going to change everyone else's worlds. And I am so excited to share the gut-brain connection with everyone, and look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you, Russ. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
You bet.
The
Rebel Scientist Podcast is a Breaking the Gray production, created by Russ Eisenman and Paul Wood, hosted by Sarah Turner, music and sound editing by Logan Shea. For more information and other fantastic podcasts, visit breakingthegray.com. That's gray with an E, breakingthegray.com.
Breaking the gray.